What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Paul Brettel here. As always, thank you for joining me. I'm the site editor over at Dairyland Express, where we cover the Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and Badgers. Also have a new article out every Monday and Friday over at Cheesehead TV. And as it says at the bottom of the screen here, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So today we're going to be discussing Jaire Alexander. And as always, I have this topic in article form over at Dairyland Express. You can also find the link in the description below. But as we all know, he is currently playing out the fifth-year option for the 2022 season that the Green Bay Packers picked up last offseason. And we know it's been reported that he and the Green Bay Packers, or at least his representatives in the Green Bay Packers, are in talks about a long-term extension. That news came out at the Combine. The discussions may have began before then, but we know they've taken place. But of course, no deal has occurred at this point. Now, with an extension, there's two big factors, or two huge benefits, I should say, that come from it. One is the obvious. They get to keep one of the best cornerbacks in football in Green Bay beyond the 2022 season. But on top of that, it'll help lower Jaire Alexander's 2022 cap hit as well, because he's playing out the fifth-year option, which is worth $13.2 million because it is performance-based. He comes with a $13.2 million cap hit. There aren't any additional years for the Packers to spread that cap hit out to. But by agreeing to an extension, adding years on the deal, turning some of that base salary to a signing bonus, spreading that cap hit out over the life of the contract, you'll then be able to lower Alexander's 2022 cap hit. I believe that this is the biggest cap-saving move that the Green Bay Packers have left at their disposal this offseason. So those are the two big reasons why Green Bay would want to get it done. Lowers the cap hit, and the obvious, you get to keep Jaire Alexander in Green Bay. Now, we don't know where they've been at in negotiations, how close they've been, how far apart they are, but I think the assumption, from the outside looking in, is that Alexander was going to surpass Jalen Ramsey's $20 million per year deal and become the highest paid cornerback in football. However, Friday evening, a little wrench may have been thrown into those plans, if those were the plans. Xavier Howard of the Miami Dolphins had 3 years remaining on his current contract, but the team added on 2 more years, making it a 5-year deal, and they infused the contract with $50.6 million in new money into Howard's deal. So this is where things get tricky, because if we look at the total 5-year contract, Xavier Howard's average annual value, which is what we know players are, what players look at, agents look at, the media, fans, all of us look at when comparing contracts from one to the other. So over the 5 years, Xavier Howard's average annual value is $18 million. So $2 million per year below what Jalen Ramsey's is. However, that new money, that $50.6 million, that average annual value divided by 2 is $25.3 million. And that just may be the figure that Jaire Alexander and his representatives are going to be looking at and saying, I need to beat that number now. So potentially the Packers went from having to beat $20 million a year to keep Alexander, or to get him to agree to extension, to now having to beat $25.3 million. And this situation very much resembles one the Packers just went through with Davante Adams. So Davante Adams, the figure he had in mind in terms of being the highest paid receiver in football was $27.25 million. He was looking at DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals. So similarly to Xavier Howard, when the Cardinals acquired Hopkins, he had 3 years left on his current deal. They added on 2 new years and infused that contract with $54.5 million in new money. Now, again, over the 5-year span, DeAndre Hopkins' average annual value is $18.9 million. But over the 2 years with the new money, it's that $27.25 million figure. So again, you can see how that creates a big discrepancy from perhaps what the team's looking at versus what the player's looking at. And again, the Green Bay Packers just went through this with Davante Adams. And this happened also in 2020 at the offensive tackle position. And again, it affected the Green Bay Packers. The Houston Texans signed Laremy Tunsil to a 3-year extension with $66 million in new money. So just in terms of that extension, he was averaging $22 million a year, which I believe the previous high was $18 million. So again, there was a somewhat significant jump from the second highest paid player to now at the time, the highest paid offensive tackle at $22 million. However, the Green Bay Packers, as we all know, they would go on to pay David Bakhtiari or have his contract surpass Tunzel's. They would use that as the benchmark. And for a brief time, David Bakhtiari was the highest paid offensive tackle in football, surpassing that $22 million per year. So this is quickly becoming a trend around the NFL, and it certainly does impact other teams who have star players. And once again, the Green Bay Packers, they may be feeling those effects of now having to provide Alexander with a contract that doesn't just surpass $20 million a year, again, which was Jalen Ramsey's benchmark, but now $25.3 million per year, even though that's only for 2 years worth rather than over the 5-year deal. So you can see how things get complicated and how that can, as I mentioned initially, throw a bit of a wrench in negotiations. Now, another big factor that I imagine is a big factor is going to be the guaranteed money that Jaire Alexander is asking for. As we all know, with most Green Bay Packers contracts, just how they do things, they really don't guarantee contracts beyond the first 2 years. I mean, go to over the cap and look at Aaron Jones' deal or Rasul Douglas's new contract. Pretty much you can pick out any of them. And after the first 2 years of a new contract that the Packers offer, they almost always have a way out of it. But with salary caps rising, players' contracts going up, I feel like they're getting more pushback on that, during this time than what they would have in the past. And again, that might be another factor. Don't know that to be certain, but the guaranteed money very well could be another factor just for the security and, making sure that the players feel that they're getting what they deserve. So I just thought that was something very interesting, that popped up, and, it happened with the Miami Dolphins, but I think there's definitely going to be a ripple effect that affects the Green Bay Packers because they're in negotiations right now with Jaire Alexander. And the longer these negotiations go on, the more opportunity is for other top cornerbacks to get new offers, and that bar is just going to keep going up and up and up and up. So these things take time, but the Green Bay Packers, the sooner they can get this done and taken care of, the better off they're going to be. Now, I want to add before I wrap up here, I know I compared this to the Devontae Adams situation, and I think, as you can see, there certainly are some definite similarities, but I absolutely expect Jaire Alexander to be back. He's 25 years old, just turned 25, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, and cornerback is one of the premier, most important positions in the game. Even if the Green Bay Packers having to potentially pay more to keep him, I still think they'll iron it out. It just means that things may be delayed a little bit more as they now have to go through and maybe rework what the deal was going to be. And while we're on the topic of Jaire Alexander, slot cornerbacks, we'll transition to that here. I have another article up at Dairyland Express that I wrote this past week discussing how slot cornerback should still be on Brian Gutekunst's radar entering the draft. Now, I know Packers have Jaire, they have Eric Stokes, they have Rasul Douglas. If the season started tomorrow, I think it's safe to say Jaire would be the guy in the slot. However, as Gutekunst mentioned earlier this week at the owners' meetings, Jaire is going to travel around with the opponent's top receiver, and I feel like that's going to be that's how things are going to go. It's going to be week to week. It's going to be game to game, and where Jaire plays. There might be one week where he takes a majority of his snaps on the boundary. There'll be another where he takes a majority of his snaps in the slot. It's just going to depend who are the Green Bay Packers up against, which receiver are they up against, what's the opponent's scheme. All of that's going to come into play. And while Jaire Alexander, maybe he ends the 2022 season with the most slot snaps on the team, but that's not going to be the only place he plays for the reason we just mentioned, following the top receiver. And also, he's just too good. He's too good to just stick in the slot. Having him on the boundary, again, facing the opponent's top receiver, that's where you can really maximize that ability that he has. So if Jaire is doing that, if he's on the boundary for a series, for a game, whatever it may be, who's going to be in the slot? Goody also mentioned that he's comfortable with the guys that they have on the roster, but Eric Stokes, I think he played less than 15 snaps in the slot there during his rookie year. Rasul Douglas only has, I believe, 80 career slot snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. Shamar John Charles, 5th-round rookie last year, he is someone who could take over that role. He is designed to be a slot corner for the Green Bay Packers, but he only has 38 career defensive snaps, day 3 pick entering a second season. There's some risk, in relying heavily on him just because there's uncertainty. We don't know. The Packers just last week signed Keyshawn Nixon from the Las Vegas, he was a free agent, but was with the Las Vegas Raiders. He has some slot experience as well. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a few hundred snaps. It's a relatively small sample size. And realistically, his biggest impact is likely going to come on special teams rather than the defensive side of the ball. So if you enter the draft, now again, because you have Stokes, Alexander, and Douglas, this is not an absolute. This isn't like receiver where the Packers are going into the draft saying, all right, we got to find a slot cornerback. If the right person's there, if the board falls the right way, absolutely take advantage of it. But again, because you have that trio, it's not a must either. But it should be on their radar, as the title of that article suggests. Reason being, for I guess the number of reasons I mentioned, they don't really have any experienced slot guys on the roster currently. But if they were to add someone, maybe it's Trent McDuffie from Washington, maybe they get Jalen Petrie or Daxton Hill, safeties who have plenty of slot experience. Pick whoever you want. But if they spend a top 100 pick on that slot player, and now you have that player on the field, it's going to give Joe Barry so much flexibility in what he can do with that secondary and how he can mix and match, how he can move guys around. Maybe let's say it's Daxton Hill, for example. You have Daxton Hill in the slot, Jaire and Stokes on the boundary, and then because you want to keep Rasul Douglas on the field, now he's your third safety playing in the middle of the field, down in the box. I mean, the endless possibilities that Barry would have to just build this already robust secondary, it would be immense, and that of course is a very, very good thing. So, and as we mentioned, Packers have arguably the best cornerback trio in football, but they have 5 picks in the top 100, 7 picks in the first 4 rounds. Just because they have those three players doesn't mean that cornerback should be completely off their radar. Finding a true slot corner who can step in and make an impact would do wonders for this defense. So that's everything that I have today. The Jaire Alexander contract. Again, I imagine it's going to be affected by Xavier Howard's new deal, and the Packers, while they don't have to add to the cornerback room, if the opportunity presents itself to add a slot cornerback in the draft, they should capitalize on that. So again, thank you for tuning in. You can find those articles at Dairyland Express, as well as below in the description. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work at Dairyland Express and Cheesehead TV. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, please hit subscribe. I do greatly appreciate it. So until next time, friends, as always, take care, stay safe, and go Pack Go.